I found out my parents left everything to my brother in their will, so I stopped helping with their bills and extra expenses. A month later, Mom texted no, hi, no, how are you, just the mortgage is due. I stared at the screen for a moment, then replied, you ever have one of those days when the whole world feels like it tilts, but not because of a big argument or a blow up, just because you finally see what's always been right there? Yeah, that's what happened to me. I'm Jake, and for years, I played the responsible son. If my family had a problem, I found a way to fix it. Every time a bill slipped through the cracks, I picked up the slack. Anytime something broke, I was already on the way, toolkit in hand. You'd think that meant something, right? That maybe after all the years and all the effort, I'd built up a little goodwill. Turns out that's not always how families work. But I never guessed how clear that would become until the day I found out about the will. No heart to heart talk, no warning, not even one of those heavy, foreboding family dinners where everyone is too polite and not quite meeting each other's eyes. Nope, just a regular boring afternoon and some paperwork. Honest to goodness, I didn't even see it coming. See, for the last 5 years or so, my parents' house basically became my part time job. I was splitting their mortgage, grabbing them groceries, fixing everything from leaky sinks to Wi Fi dead zones. Meanwhile, my brother Eric, professional napping champion. No job, no bills, no can you bring home bread? Texts. He was just existing, and everyone seemed fine with that except me. That day, my dad called me over for help with some legal paperwork. Nothing special, really. He just pushed a pile of folders my way and mumbled something about needing them scanned and organized. You're good at this tech stuff, Jake, he said, like I hadn't heard it 1,000 times. So I sat down, started working through the pile, not expecting anything except minor boredom. But mixed in with the bank statements and tax forms was this plain folder labeled in neat black marker, Estate Plan, Last Will, and Testament. At first I just stared. Was this new? Old? I couldn't remember them ever mentioning it. And yeah, the curiosity got me. Call it a bad habit, or maybe just years of feeling a bit left out. Either way, I opened it up. I figured, if anyone deserved to know what was planned for the future, it was the guy paying the bills. What I saw next knocked the wind right out of me. There, in three impersonal lines, my parents left everything seriously, everything to Eric, the house, the car, their savings. Not even a half-hearted mention of me outside of, we love both our sons equally. That was the sentence. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or just walk away on the spot. I sat there for a long second, trying to process it. 5 years of extra work, hundreds of little sacrifices, all while I watched my parents hand Eric the gold medal for effort he never gave. Official, right there in writing. That's when I realized sometimes you think you're part of something, but really you're just a helpful bystander. And none of it's about fairness. The longer I stared at those papers, the colder I felt. It's a weird thing, having the truth suddenly spelled out for you. Like someone turned on a floodlight in a room you'd only ever seen in shadows. And let me tell you, nothing prepares you for that level of icy clarity, especially when it comes smacking you with your own last name. I kept thinking maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe everything to Eric was some kind of lawyer language. Maybe there was more to the story. So I read it again. Nope. Plain as day. Eric got it all. The house, any money, everything. I was named only once, barely a footnote. Suddenly, all the times I stayed late after work to fix their appliances, picked up prescriptions, juggled their doctor's appointments, and paid for repairs flooded my mind. Every text from Mom, Jake, can you stop by? Every call from Dad, son, are you busy? It had always been me. Always. But not one line for me in that document. Not even a thank you. That cut deeper than any amount of cash. My hands started shaking a little, anger mixing with heartbreak. There was this uncomfortable silence in the room, just the sound of the scanner and my own breathing. I wondered, how long had my parents planned it this way? Had they always looked at me as the fallback, the guy who would never ask for anything in return? Was Eric always the chosen one? Or had I just missed every sign? That's when my dad walked back in. He picked the worst possible moment, of course. Hey, Jake, what's taking so long? I didn't say a word at first. Just held up the will and stared him right in the eye. So, this is it? Everything to Eric? He froze. I mean, his whole body went stiff, like I'd short circuited his mainframe. For once in my life, my dad looked genuinely caught. He tried to play it off. It's not what you think. His voice was too quick, too practiced. Like he'd already rehearsed this conversation. That's when it all boiled over. Really? Because it's pretty clear. I've propped you guys up for years. I pay your bills, skip vacations to bail you out, fix the house, and somehow Eric gets at times all asterisk. The words came tumbling out fast and sharp. Dad didn't want the deal. He just shook his head and muttered, "It's complicated." That's it. No apology, no reason, just two useless words. Like those could explain a lifetime. I wanted closure, not excuses. "Where's Mom?" I called. I needed to hear it from her, too. When she walked in, I saw her expression change. It was this cocktail of guilt and old habits. I actually thought maybe she'll understand. But no, she just gave me this pitying look and said, "Jake, honey, you don't need an inheritance. You have a good job. Eric, well, he struggles. We just want him to be okay." I almost laughed. Really, I almost lost it. I'd been bending over backward for them, and now I was the one with enough. Yes, I had a job. I'd made it on my own, but that wasn't the point. All those years I gave everything I could for love, for duty, and this was the thanks I got. That's when something switched off in me, like a fuse just popped inside my chest. Okay, got it. I put the will back on the table, careful not to slam it, and made myself as calm as possible, glad to know where I stand. They tried to call after me, voices echoing down the hallway, but I didn't turn around. I walked right out the front door, letting it close behind me. Not a single glance back. That was the moment I decided I wasn't just going to take it anymore. If my family wanted me to be invisible, I could do that, starting now. Stepping out of my parents' house that day, I thought I might feel lighter, like some weight would finally fall off my shoulders now that I knew where I stood. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had dug a pit in my chest. The anger and hurt just kept swirling. It wasn't even about the money, not really. It was about all those years of bending over backwards, making sure everything ran smoothly, and then discovering it didn't count for anything at all. Most people would say you can just shrug things off, brush it away, and move on. But when it comes to family, it isn't that simple. The wounds cut deep. After a few blocks, I stopped walking and just stood there, trying to breathe through the sting. I wanted answers. I wanted something that made sense. Part of me hoped my parents would call me back and say they'd made a mistake, maybe explain something I'd missed. But as I looked back at their front door, I realized deep down I already knew there would be no apology. I forced myself home, kept my phone silent, and let the evening pass in a blur. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I replayed every memory in my head, holidays where I'd done all the cooking, weekends fixing the leaky roof, bailing them out quietly when money ran short. In every picture, I was present, helping, showing up. And Eric, he'd been there 2 feet up, snacks in hand, living without a care. How did I end up so invisible? How could parents look at their sons and so clearly choose one above the other? The next day, I texted my parents. I tried to keep it calm and straightforward. I want to talk more about the will. I think I deserve an explanation. The reply took hours to arrive, and when it did, it was from my dad, short and tired. "We'll talk when things cool off. There's nothing more to say right now." I stared at the screen, frustration growing, hands in fists. I nearly called him right then, but I stopped myself. I was tired of being the one to chase. The day after that, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was soft but strangely distant, like she'd practiced what to say. "Jake, honey, it's not easy for us either. Eric just needs more help in life." I waited for something more, a sign that she saw my pain or regret in her voice. Instead, she just added, "We love you both, you know." I could tell she wanted the conversation over quickly, wanted me to forgive, forget, and get things back to the way they were. But I wasn't ready to pretend. I told her honestly, "It just feels like you're choosing Eric over me. After everything I've done, that hurts." She went quiet for a few seconds before sighing. Jake, it isn't about choosing. It's about helping the person who can't help himself. I almost laughed. That was their logic. Eric needed them, and by extension, deserved everything. But where did that leave me, the son who needed nothing, except maybe a little respect and acknowledgement? In their eyes, I was self-sufficient to the point of being unnecessary. Dad called me later that night. This time he sounded annoyed, frustrated even. We did our best raising you. Life isn't about dividing things up 50-50. It's about protecting the weak. He meant Eric, of course, like I was supposed to understand. But his words only made the knot in my stomach tighten. The days after were a mess of awkward silences and half-hearted attempts to smooth things over. My parents took every chance to act like nothing had happened. They wanted me at Sunday dinner, wanted me to help with repairs, but never once brought up the will or truly admitted how it felt to be cut out like that. I went by a couple more times, out of routine more than anything. I watched as Eric did nothing but reap the benefits. Every visit made me a little angrier, my patience chipping away piece by piece. A week later, I hit my limit. My dad asked me again to cover the next month's mortgage payment because things are tight. This time, something inside me snapped. I looked him in the eye and simply said, no. The silence in the room was deafening. He looked at me like I'd grown another head. My mom tried to step in, giving me the puppy dog eyes she always used when she wanted something, but I wouldn't budge. Jake, please, we really need your help. We're family, she pleaded, voice trembling. That's when I realized family, to them, meant me being available whenever they needed it, no questions asked. It meant supporting them, supporting Eric, keeping their world spinning with as little friction as possible. But when it came time to look after me, or even just recognize what I'd sacrificed, I wasn't even a consideration. I straightened my shoulders and said, not this time. Eric can handle it. Mom gasped, almost offended. Dad's face darkened, but I wasn't swayed. I packed up my things, said, you made your decision, and left. No arguing, no last-minute guilt. On the way home, I finally felt something other than anger. I felt free. Maybe, just maybe, things could change if I stopped playing my old role. Maybe I could finally stand up for myself. That morning, walking away from their house, my phone weighed heavy in my pocket, buzzing every hour or so. But I ignored it. I needed space. I needed quiet. For the first time in years, I went a whole day without checking in. And you know what? The world didn't stop turning. Dinner was just for me. The feeling was weirdly peaceful. But as the days passed, the reality started to set in for everyone else. At first, I assumed my parents were waiting for me to cave. Maybe they thought I'd wake up, feel guilty, and slip back into my old routine, saving the day, picking up the bills. Maybe they figured the silent treatment would do the job, that I wouldn't handle being ignored. Joke was on them. I felt calmer than I had in years. A couple weeks in, the text started again, more persistent, less friendly. Dad sent, the property taxes are due next week, as if that should mean something to me. No, how are you? Or, we miss you. Just a request, businesslike, like nothing had changed. I almost laughed at the predictability of it all. Did they seriously think I'd leap into action after everything? I waited before replying. When I did, I played it just as flat. I'm sure Eric can handle it since everything is his now, right? That's all I wrote. Sent. Done. The messages switched tone quickly. Mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She texted, Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk. Suddenly now it was an emergency. I waited an hour, staring at the screen before responding. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Silence for a while. I figured maybe they'd finally back off, but I underestimated their persistence and their ability to turn guilt into an art form. That night, Eric texted, dude, why are you being so dramatic? It's not a big deal. Just help them like you always do. He actually typed that. I could almost hear him whining all the way from his spot on their couch. I texted back, no, you're the favorite. Ask them to call you. He replied, whatever, man, it's just money. Don't make this bigger than it is. The hypocrisy nearly made me choke. Now that it was his money on the table, suddenly it's not important. The cycle continued. My parents tried everything: more texts, more calls, sometimes even guilt tripping me about family values and everything they'd done for me growing up. Dad texted, "We just need a little help with the mortgage this month. Don't be selfish." That was rich. After years of sacrifice, asterisk I times was the subject from mom. I reread, then put my phone face down and didn't answer. That night, for the first time in a long while, I went to bed with zero obligations. No bills to juggle, no frantic late night emails to fix another problem, just stillness. The next day, my phone buzzed the bank transfer request: $3,500, straight from mom. Not even a message, just a formal transfer, cold and shameless. I declined it. A few minutes later, mom called again. I ignored it. Then another text. "Jake, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline?" I took my time replying. "Because it's not my responsibility anymore. Ask Eric." Now they knew they couldn't rely on me. Now it was real. And as the days passed, so did the messages, each one a little more desperate. "We're going to lose the house if you don't help us. Are you really letting your parents become homeless?" That last one actually made me laugh. I knew they weren't about to be on the street, they just didn't want to dip into their own savings. Or, heaven forbid, ask Eric to step up. I let the phone ring, ignored every buzz, and focused on rebuilding my own life. Even Eric got bolder. "Just send them the money already, bro. You're making this harder than it has to be." My response was simple: use your inheritance. You got chosen. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not happiness exactly, but a relief. I'd finally stepped off the treadmill, letting everyone else run themselves tired. And if that made me the villain in my parents' eyes, well, maybe it was time for them to learn how it felt to stand on their own. A few days into my self-imposed silence, I honestly believed things might settle down, that maybe my parents and Eric would finally get the hint and stop trying to pull me back in. I thought, hey, maybe I'll finally get to breathe. But that peace was short-lived, because sometimes when people can't get what they want by calling or texting, they up the ante. And in my family, that meant showing up uninvited and expecting the world to fall in line. It started on a random weekday morning. I was deep in emails at work when my phone rang a number I didn't recognize, which usually means spam or delivery mix-up. Instead, it was the front desk of my apartment building. The receptionist sounded uncomfortable, almost embarrassed. "Hi, Jake. I have your parents and brother down here in the lobby. They say it's an emergency and you're not answering your phone." That was surreal. My brain fumbled for a response. "What? They're here? For what?" She hesitated, then added, "They're pretty insistent. Should I let them up?" I felt my jaw clench. "No. Please tell them I'm not available. I'm not expecting anyone." Another pause. "Okay." They said they'll wait. I hung up, all the calm I'd found draining out of me in a flash. They actually drove across town just to corner me at home. It honestly felt like something out of a bad sitcom. They waited in the lobby for over an hour. Eventually I caved, not because I wanted to see them, but because I knew they weren't leaving on their own. The longer I sat at my desk, the more my phone buzzed. Text from mom: "Jake, come downstairs, please. We are waiting. Open the door. We just want to talk." Each one had the same edge. No apology, no explanation, just an expectation. Finally, I grabbed my keys, took a deep breath, and headed for the elevator. Every step, I tried to prepare myself, reminding myself not to let them steamroll me again. But nothing could have braced me for what was waiting when those elevator doors slid open. There they were, mom, dad, Eric, all lined up like some jury, blocking the only exit, like they could keep me there until I cracked. Mom had her arms crossed, eyes already glistening, ready for her big monologue. Dad looked stiff, jaw tight, somewhere between furious and hurt. Eric just leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, looking every bit the bored teenager, even though he was nearly 30. Before I could say a word, Mom dove in. "Jake, finally. Sit down with us. We need to talk face to face." I gently shook my head. No, we don't. You can say whatever you need right here. Mom's voice went straight for guilt. We're your family. We raised you. Why are you shutting us out over one decision? I let out a slow breath, doing everything I could to keep my voice even and calm. Because you didn't make one decision. You made a lifetime of decisions. I gave you everything I could for years, and you made it clear I'm not part of your future. Dad jumped in, voice harder. Don't twist things. We have reasons for how we handled the will. That's not your business. That actually made me smile, but not in a nice way. Really? Because I thought paying your mortgage was a family business? Eric snorted. Why do you even care so much? It's just money, man. You always act like you're above it. I turned to him, letting out a cold laugh. It's only just money when it's not yours to lose, right? For the first time, Eric looked uncomfortable. Dad's voice grew louder. This isn't how we raised you. You're making things harder than they have to be. Just help us through a few more months. I shook my head. I already spent years helping you. How much of my life do you want me to give before it's enough? Mom suddenly reached for my hand, her voice trembling. Jake, please. Eric's your brother. We all need to stick together. We didn't mean to hurt you. I pulled my hand away, trying not to lose it. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Eric's old enough to step up. If you want him to be the man of the house, it's time for him to act like it. Eric turned red, finally pushing himself off the wall, annoyed. You think I want this? I never asked for any of this. I didn't let him finish. No, you didn't ask. You just took everything that was handed to you, no questions asked. He sneered, but there was no bite to it. Mom's last move was the full guilt trip, voice thick with tears. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Is this the son we raised? I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. No, the son you raised would have kept giving, even when he got nothing in return. But that's over. A long, cold silence followed. People in the lobby pretended not to watch, but you could feel everyone listening. Dad sighed, looking away. You just can't let things go, can you, Jake? No, not this time. Because for once, I'm putting myself first. You made it crystal clear who mattered, and it wasn't me. Mom sniffled, her mascara smudging. We're a family. Families take care of each other. I nodded. Exactly. So why didn't you take care of me? They froze. All their arguments, guilt trips, and manipulations suddenly useless. I turned, done with the performance. I think we're finished here. They didn't follow as I walked away. Back in my apartment, heart pounding, I closed the door and slid down to the floor, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'd finally said everything I needed. Their choices were theirs. And now for the first time in my adult life, my choices were mine. Blocking my parents' numbers and Eric's wasn't easy. For a split second just before my thumb hovered over the block button, I hesitated. Old instincts kicked in, the ones that said, maybe if you just call, everything will smooth over. But I pushed past that. Years of putting their needs first were finally over, and now it was time to set real boundaries. With no calls and no texts getting through, the silence felt impossibly quiet at first. It was like stepping into a soundproof room, jarring, peaceful, and a little lonely all at once. The ache lingered, but every day it lessened, little by little, replaced with relief. I wasn't waiting for the next request, the next crisis. I could finally think my own thoughts. But my family, especially my parents, weren't ones to go quietly into the night. If they couldn't reach me directly, they'd find another way to make their voices heard. It didn't take long for the drama to go public. It started with Facebook. Now, neither of my parents had ever been especially tech-savvy. Dad still called it the Facebook, but when it came to complaining, they suddenly became experts. The posts were thinly veiled hints about ungrateful children, sacrifices no one notices, and family letting you down. Mom posted a blurry photo from my childhood, her caption full of longing for better days when love meant something. Dad never wanted to hold back, went straight for the jugular. We did everything for our children, and this is how we're repaid. Some people don't know loyalty. He even tagged me, the first and only time he ever tagged anyone. At first, I rolled my eyes. It was just social media drama. But their friends started chiming in, some with supportive comments, others with veiled digs, all piling on like they actually knew both sides. Reading strangers' judgments stung more than I expected, even though I knew the truth. Eric couldn't resist joining in. He shared some drawn out status about family not being about money, but love and sacrifice, not naming me, but making it clear who he meant. The stories grew more grand and less honest with each post. Suddenly, I was the villain, the selfish son, the one who walked away from family for a silly grudge. People I hadn't spoken to in years messaged with concern, asking what had happened and why I couldn't just forgive and move on. That's when I realized how quickly people could turn on someone they barely knew, all based on one side of the story. That hurt worst of all. I had a choice: let them control the narrative or set the record straight. After a long evening of pacing the apartment, I finally logged in and wrote my own post. I didn't drag them through the mud. I didn't stoop to their level. I simply told the truth. I'd spent years helping. I'd been there every time I was needed. But when it was time for recognition or fairness, I was cut out completely. I ended it with, "I wish my family well, but I won't be taken for granted anymore." After I hit post, I turned off my phone for the night. It felt like a final page turning, a chapter closed for good. Looking back, I realized that discovering the will wasn't just about money or property. It was the moment I finally saw the truth of my family, the dynamics, the favoritism, and what love looked like on their terms. It wasn't what I had hoped for, but it was real. And sometimes reality is the first step to healing. This whole experience taught me something important. Family isn't always blood and history. Sometimes family is about respect, appreciation, and how people treat you when no one's watching. I gave my time, energy, and money for years, expecting nothing more than fairness and gratitude. When that didn't come, I had to decide whether to keep giving to folks who didn't see me or finally stand up for myself. Walking away was the hardest and best choice I ever made. It wasn't easy cutting contact, especially with the guilt that family can pile on, but I learned that shielding myself wasn't selfish, it was survival. And sometimes survival means choosing peace over chaos, self respect over obligation. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just at peace. I've accepted that my role in this family wasn't what I once believed. I was the silent helper, the invisible support valued only as long as I stayed useful. That's not a role anyone deserves to play. If sharing my story teaches people anything, I hope it's this: your worth isn't measured by what others give you or leave for you in a will. It's measured by how you treat yourself, by the boundaries you set, and the love you refuse to give in to unless it's returned honestly. Sometimes breaking free from toxic ties opens a path to freedom and self-love. It's not about burning bridges, but knowing when it's time to build a new path, one where you matter, where you're seen for who you really are, not just what you provide. So if you're out there struggling with betrayal or feeling invisible, remember this story. You don't have to stay where you aren't wanted, and you deserve better. I did it, and one day you will too. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever faced something like this, share it below. Sometimes we find strength just by knowing we're not alone. Until next time, take care of yourself, because that's where real family begins. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt unseen or unappreciated in your own family, drop a comment below and share your experience. Sometimes just knowing others have been through the same thing can make all the difference. Don't forget to like this video if you found it meaningful, and subscribe for more real, raw stories straight from Reddit. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching and being part of this community. Take care of yourself, you deserve it.